Hello, welcome to this game review. We'll have a look at a quite difficult game in which both sides made a lot of blunders. Some of them were due to time trouble, but some of them were simply due to not looking for checks, captures and attacks, and the forcing moves, which are the most important type of moves in chess. So it started as a Caro-Kann. This was the fantasy variation. It's very ambitious as white wants to leave 2 pawns in the center. In general it kind of weakens the king, but okay, this doesn't matter too much for now. White develops sensibly, black doesn't really develop too sensibly, but okay. Bishop b4, bishop d2 is a bit soft perhaps. White could just continue like this. This is not really a big threat. White shouldn't care about the structure. Bishop d2. He goes to take with the bishop, but again he shouldn't care about the structure. The bishop belongs on this diagonal, but these are details. And very soon white gets a winning position after f5. The reason it's winning is because black is opening the center, even though he's creating weaknesses and his knights are still quite badly placed and his king is in the center. And here white could look for checks, and this check is a bit annoying. If g6, queen h6, now the queen is in a very annoying position and white can castle even queenside. He can start taking stuff in the center and opening up the position towards this king. But knight f3 is fine. Both sides castle. Black takes, white takes back with the f pawn to open the f file, and black plays f5, which is quite typical, but this is a huge blunder because it allows a very typical sacrifice, which even has a name. It's called the Greek gift. We give up the bishop on h7. Point being that if black takes, then knight g5, and if the king goes to h8, this is checkmate instantly on h7. And if g8, we go queen h5 anyway, and there's no one to prevent us from queen h7 checkmate next move. And also if the king goes to the center, this usually doesn't end well. For example, queen g4, but there's other moves as well, and this king will be checkmated. And so this is a very important tactic in e4 openings that we have to know. Instead white plays this strange move b4, and this will be kind of a tendency that white will not be focusing on the main things of the position. He will be playing on the flanks when there's clearly something in the center happening. And here, even if we don't see bishop h7, then knight g5 is also a pretty convincing win because it attacks e6 and h7. So it is also a forcing move, which has to be considered. And b4 is a bit random. This doesn't really do anything. cd. And bishop takes back. Even here bishop h7 is the best move. But okay, here rook f4 happened. I'm sure you can guess by now the best move, bishop h7, and after this knight g5, and here we even win a rook while also giving checkmate. But queen e2 is a bit soft again. This allows black to develop some pieces, as at the moment black is severely behind. Rook a1. This is also a bit soft, but okay, it's at least developing a piece. Queen c7, g3, rook goes to f5, but here the rook can just be taken. And at this point white is an exchange up, basically for nothing, and not only does he have material, he also has mobilized all of his pieces quite successfully, and now it's time for action. White also pushes his passed pawn, and he should be able to win convincingly, but let's take a look. Knight f6. Here bishop e5 was played, which is a very strange move as the knight can just take the bishop, so there's no reason to exchange bishop for knight like this. We could just take here, again a capture, black recaptures, and now his structure is also terrible. And after whatever move, knight d4 or something, white is just completely winning. He has the better structure, more material, he will take these pawns, the king is weak, so we could just simplify the position a bit. Now queen e7. And here again white makes the same mistake as with b4. He plays a random move on the queen side, b5. This doesn't really do anything. This pawn, it doesn't matter at this point. Again, it's clear that white's pieces are in the center. He has this passed pawn. He should do something about this. Maybe knight d4 to take f5 to promote the pawn. Maybe again take here. Here after queen takes, we can even open up the position further with c4, or just move our queen somewhere. There's a lot of options, but b5 wastes a whole move, and now black had the chance to put his knight on e4, which would block the e file forever. Bishop e6 will be the next move. White will lose his passed pawn, and the advantage has all but gone. bishop e6 instead. And here again white has a very simple tactic, a two-move tactic involving on captures. Bishop takes f6, and this creates a discovered attack on the bishop on e6. Black has to take back, and now white is a whole rook up, and he should win the endgame quite easily. Instead, knight g5. Again, we should be looking at checks, captures, and attacks. And now a lot of blunders happen. Here black should just move his bishop, but he goes here. Here, if white had moved his bishop basically anywhere, or like a1 or d4 or something, this creates a discovered attack on e6, and also pins the bishop to the queen, and black can't do anything about white taking the piece. Instead, h4 happened, and again we have the same theme, a random move on the side of the board, which doesn't really do anything. It's clear that our pieces are on the e file, on the f file. We should be looking at this and looking for tactics there, checks, captures, and attacks. But h4 just gives up the bishop on e5, and now black is actually winning. He has two pieces and a pawn for a rook, and the white's rooks on the f and e file are not as effective anymore. But soon white gets a winning advantage again. a4, another random move, but now knight c4. This just gives up the bishop on e6. White decides to take with the knight, but here probably it's better to move to an endgame and activate his pieces. These knights are quite strangely placed, and white can use the rooks on the f, e, and d files to take more stuff, and he should be winning. But okay, knight e6 is fine. But here, knight c7. Here, this is a huge blunder, even though it's a fork, because it allows black to create a fork, which involves a check. And it's clear that black isn't looking for checks, because if he was, then queen c5 would come to mind as the only check, basically. And this picks up the knight, and black is again better. But rook c8, now white takes this pawn. And here, now black sees this check, as he was prompted by the attack on the queen. And now white has to solve a problem. His king is attacked and his knight is attacked. And sometimes during double attacks, we can defend both things. And here, white's only move was knight e3 to defend both pieces. But instead he goes king h1, and now black is winning. A few moves later, black had the chance to take on c2, winning the queen. Instead he played rook e8, and this gives white chances to hold. c4, a6, now rook d1, and this just gives up the pawn on c4 for nothing. At the moment it wasn't hanging because of the hanging rook on e8. Now black doesn't take it. h5, another kind of random move. Here again white had a chance to win the game with a simple tactic, involving deflections and pins. So at the moment this knight is pinned because of this rook, and white can take this knight on d7. Point being that if the knight takes, then this rook hangs, and if the rook takes, then here white can take here. And now white is actually winning because he is just checkmating. This king is very weak and this queen is too far away from the game. Instead, again, a random move on the queen side, another random answer, g4. We should be looking at checks and captures and attacks. Again, this cannot be stated enough. g4, but now again white's only chance is to take here. But soon, again, knight f6, soon the advantage dissipated again. At this point, white's only move was to give this check. The point being that if here, then we can take this, and now the rook is not hanging on d1 in this variation. Similar to king f7, again we take, and now there's no rook on d1. So just why we cannot take here on e5, because now, as happened in the game, after rook e8, black defends. Point being that if white had taken here, the queen takes on d1. So it was important to calculate accurately here. And at this point black is a piece up, and the game ended in checkmate quite soon after losing the queen as well. So quite a chaotic game, and a lot of chances were missed for both sides, and a lot of it could have been avoided by consciously looking for checks, captures, and attacks.